Welcome to this, our March Spring Lunch and Learn series for 2014 with the School of Library and Information Science. My name is Heather Burke. I'm the Student Affairs Officer here, and we are very excited to be presenting a panel of speakers from UK Special Collections that has been assembled by our Society of American Archivists student chapter. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Seth Newell to introduce our wonderful panel.
Hey, I know most of you already, but for those who are watching at home, hi, welcome. I'm the president of the Society of American Archivists. We have a pretty sizable panel here to talk about different things having to do with the archives profession and special collections. So to get started off, our first question, just give a little brief introduction, who you are, where you're from, what school you went to, degrees, and then we'll move on to more job-related questions from there. So, Ben, you want to start?
Who do I look at? Those of you
Whatever's natural.
Maybe the people in the house.
I'm Kopana. I'm the oral history archivist. I have a bachelor's degree in photography and MLIS from the school here. Both of the degrees are from here. And what else did you want to know?
Anything?
Huh?
Where are you from?
Where you're from?
I'm from Eastern.
Speak up a little bit.
I'm from Eastern Kentucky. And yeah, and I live here now. I have 2 cats.
Awesome.
I'm Megan Mummy. I'm the Collections Management Archivist. I have a BA in History from the University of Texas at Austin, as well as a Master's of Science in Information Studies from there too, and with a concentration in archives. I'm from Austin, and I have a dog and a baby.
That's a lot more work than 2 cats.
And you mentioned the dog first, I noticed.
The dogs, no, they're both pretty bossy.
Deirdre Skaggs, I'm the Associate Dean of Special Collections. I have a BFA and MFA in photography and a Master's of Library and Information Science from the University of Pittsburgh, also with a concentration in Archives and Records Management. And I'm from Kentucky originally, Vanceburg, Kentucky. And I have 2 cats and a baby.
The baby's much larger, but yeah, he's not a baby.
I'm Ruth Bryan, and I have a bachelor's degree in cultural anthropology and a master's degree in cultural anthropology from Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota, and the New School for Social Research in New York City, and a master's degree in public history from the North Carolina State University. Got all the N's mixed up. And I grew up starting outside of the United States until I was 6 and a half, and then moved to West Virginia for 1st through 12th grade, Morgantown. There was something else. Oh, I am the director of archives. And I'm sick, so I need a little bit of leeway. Director of archives and university archivist here.
Okay, I'm Sarah Dorpinghouse. I'm the Digital Projects Library Manager here at UK Libraries. I'm originally from Iowa. I got my BA at the University of Northern Iowa in History and Education. So I actually was a high school history teacher before pursuing my career in archives, and I have a Master's in Library and Information Science from Iowa. I think that's it.
Great. All right, well, everybody gave their titles, and those are just sometimes can be a lot of words, especially to people who haven't yet entered the profession. So why don't we just go and just tell a little bit about what you actually do in your position, and maybe if you want to go into how you got there, the different roads that led you to whatever you're doing today. You can start down on this end, Sarah.
Okay, well, like I said, I used to teach high school history, and I love history. I didn't like trying to get other people to love history, so I left that. I also was a terrible classroom management person, as someone straight out of college. But anyway, I left that, got into the program for library science, had no idea I wanted to do special collections or archives work, but then I started working at the Iowa Women's Archives processing, and I'm a very sort of like organized detail person, so it was super natural and very easy for me. And that's how I decided that I wanted to do that. So all of my previous positions before this one were project archivist positions. This is the first one where I've actually been like specifically on digital work, but I also worked at the Iowa Digital Library doing metadata and scanning things. So that's sort of why I was hired for this position, is because I can kind of bridge the two worlds of digital libraries and special collections and archives. So on a daily basis, I oversee a staff of now 3 people who do digitization of manuscript collections and other holdings within UK libraries. I sort of like QC that and check the metadata and facilitate our changes to the digital library system and things like that.
I have already forgotten the question. What do I do and
Yep,
how do I
how'd
get
you
there?
get here?
Yeah, okay. So a big part of my job is supervising the archives department, which is 8 people, a combination of faculty and staff. And some of that supervision also relates to implementing and maintaining standards for processing and description. Megan and I work very closely in doing all of that kind of thing and sort of getting, providing the resources so that any of the projects that we're working on can go forward on a daily, monthly, 6-monthly basis. And then also participate in sort of long-term planning, various terms, yearly, 3 years, 5 years, etc. I also am supposed to be university archivist, so that means working with Nancy DeMarcus, who is the records manager, to move the records of the university that are considered of permanent retention sort of into the archival process out of different campus units, and also working with alumni and faculty and staff and other people that are related to the university to have their papers and other things come to special collections. And I started doing archives because I was laid off from my job in New York City, which was coordinating the music side of making. I was working at BMG Classics, which is a classical music record company, and the whole department was laid off, the department that made CDs. And I had wanted to be a cultural anthropologist before then, but had decided that it wasn't for me for reasons that just sort of have to do with the sort of overall topic. And so when you're laid off, it's a pretty desperate feeling. You're like, first of all, I don't have a job and I don't have money, but then also, like, what is my purpose in life? And I had sort of lost that to begin with, because I wasn't going to be an anthropologist, which I thought I had been from the time I was 7. I had this idea that I was going to be an anthropologist, and then it sort of went by the wayside. So I was in Barnes & Noble. I remember this very clearly. The very next day, we were let go on Thursday, and I was in Barnes & Noble on Friday, because you know what you do when you don't have anything to do, you go to a bookstore. At least in New York City, where, So anyway, and there was a book called, and I remember it as being called Careers for History Majors, but it might not have been exactly that. And I hadn't been a history major, but I thought, well, I like history, okay. So I pulled the book off the shelf, and archivist was one of the careers listed in there. And the description made it sound like exactly the kind of thing I had been looking for, which was a combination of working with the physical stuff, like the actual practicalities of how do you deal with archival material, and then also the historical context, or the sort of the subject and event and people-focused context of the material. And because I came from a very theoretical social science, humanities background, that attracted me too. So that started me on the whole path to sort of figuring out more about what are archives. I volunteered at a couple of places in New York City. I did an internship at the Irish Theatre Archives in Dublin. And I went to NC State for my master's degree, and that just started the whole thing.
Well,
Have you forgotten to? It's very easy.
I think that ultimately how I got here was because when I was an undergraduate, when I'd finally decided to be a photography major, because I was a chemistry major first, among many other things, including psychology, environmental analysis. I had settled on photography, and the only job on campus that related to photography was in the photographic archives. And as is probably still a fairly common experience as an undergrad, I didn't know what an archive was, but they had a dark room, and I went to work there. And I loved working there. And I got to work, this was at the University of Louisville, and their photo archive was connected to their rare books, and so I just bounced from whichever unit had money at that particular time to hire student employees, so I did lots of different things there. It still never occurred to me, though, that was a career that I might like to pursue, because I plan on getting a Master's in Fine Arts, which I did at The Ohio State University. And when I was there, I started to really miss working in the archives. And I didn't get an MFA so that I could teach. I did it so that I could make art for 2 more years and not go into the real world. But it occurred to me that I was going to have to go into the real world after all. And so I thought that it may have just been, maybe I was romanticizing this job that I had, or it was just nostalgia. But there was conveniently another student position at Ohio State that was in one of their special collections areas, which is the Cartoon Research Library. So I got hired there and realized it wasn't just nostalgia, and applied to a program that had a concentration in archives and records management, since I knew that that's what I wanted to do. As far as what I do now, being in charge of special collections is different from what attracts a lot of people to the profession, where you are very connected with the stuff. When I specifically came to UK, I was a project archivist for 2 years working on the Lexington Herald Leader photograph collection. And so what I was really interested in all through grad school and after was the visual record, and how I was really interested in the way visual history and our connection to images has changed culture and society and things like that. But I also realized very quickly that that is very limited in terms of a career path. So if that's okay with you, which for lots of people it is, and there's nothing wrong with that, then you can be a photo archivist. But if you want to do anything else, or if you have ideas about the profession or how to change your program, it's not enough. So that's what I get to do now, is be in charge of special collections, which has, I think we have 22 now full-time employees, and I don't even know how many student assistants we have right now, anywhere from 10 to over 10. Yeah, 10 to 15 easily. And special collections here at the university, anyway, is comprised of the Louis B. Nunn Center for Oral History, which is where Kupana is, the archives, which has main collecting areas within archives, which include the Burt T. Combs Appalachian Collection, the Public Policy Collection, the University Archives, Audiovisual Archives, and manuscripts as well. And then we also have our Rare Books and Special Collections Library. And in all of those areas, we collect very broadly. We're University of Kentucky is a land-grant institution, and so our collecting mission is also very large and broad. But you may ask this question later, but what I love most about being in this position at an academic university is that we have so many options for what we can do every day. You know, we can come up with ideas and we can pursue those, and in most cases they're going to be supported. And so I really like that aspect of still being able to be creative. And I still get to be in touch with the photographs that I love. We have our photo exhibits, so I get to stay connected in that way, and be able to work with a great group of people and shape the future of special collections.
So, let's see.
It's hard to start.
It is hard to start. I came to archives when I decided I didn't want to be a historian, because I didn't like having to come up with a topic to write about. I loved looking at the stuff, which is what I do now every day, is look at the stuff. But I hated having to squish it into an argument. I was writing an undergraduate history thesis at the University of Texas, and the one thing I liked about the class where they teach you how to write a thesis was touring the different archives on the University of Texas's campus. There are, I don't know, 4 or 5. And I remember walking into the LBJ Presidential Library on campus, and it's very striking. They have their stacks exposed with a glass wall, and you can see, like, 10 levels up, all the red boxes with the big seals on them. And it's a very striking visual. And then they take you back in the back, and they open the boxes, and they say, look, here, this volunteer took a bite out of a 30-year-old buddy cake. It seemed really awesome to me that you got to work with these things every day and touch them and just appreciate them for what they were, instead of having to string them into some argument. So that's what I decided to do, and I went to UT's program. It was right there. So, and then I came to Kentucky, and now I get to look at the stuff every day. And by stuff, I say stuff because my professor really hated the term stuff. And anyway, I work with the unique historical primary source material, so nothing published. And it comprises letters, operating records of organizations and businesses, personal papers, all sorts of things, artifacts, whatever you could come up with, I work with. And I am responsible for the day-to-day management of our content management database, which has all of our accession records, our names and subjects, all of our finding aids, collection guides. And I also manage sort of the day-to-day full processing. A lot of students. I work with many of you sitting in this room. I review finding aids and send them to Sarah for posting online. And I work very closely with Ruth and Deirdre. I'd like to work more closely with you. Okay. So, that's what I do.
Great.
Well, I'm here by complete accident. It's a total accident that I landed here. I've had many lives before I got here, and one of them was as a traveling professional musician. And I did that for a long time until I stopped, and I came back to school because I never changed my residency. So I still got in-state tuition, even though I'd been living all over the country. And I got into the fine arts program over here, got the BA, was going to do the MFA thing, right? And life threw me a couple of curveballs, and I chose not to do that. So instead, I thought, well, I'll be a self-supporting artist. And after I had 8 part-time jobs, it wore me out. So that wasn't going to work. And I was working on a horse farm as a groom when a position came available in what was then the reprographics department. They were primarily looking for a photographer to microfilm newspapers, as we still had a newspaper program at the time. And I got the job, and I was able to quit all my other jobs and just have the one job. And I did that for about 18 months. And back before we had digital library services, back before it was digital programs, back before it was digital initiatives, it was Eric Weig in a room in Young. And he and Becky got a grant to digitize some rare and imperiled Kentuckiana books from microfilm. And so I transitioned out of my permanent position as a microfilmer and started with that project. And then I ended up just staying with digital collections ever since. And so fast forward a couple of years, and I ran the National Digital Newspaper Program, which was funded through NEH. And I did that until the funding ran out. And so I was just about to become Ruth and be unemployed. And in the 11th hour, a position opened in the Nunn Center. And so I could take all of the experience that I had as a project manager and, you know, sort of funnel it in to help Doug pull all that together. So that's how I got here. And what I do every day is I've got a few students and STEPS employees, and so we keep them fed with stuff a lot. And so that takes quite a bit of time when you have to keep everything moving through the pipeline for them. And then, you know, I look after the database. I sort of do the back end stuff for the reference. I was doing all the reference, and we got a little help with that. So now I just do the technical stuff for all that. Deal with all of the accession and stuff that comes in, you know, make sure it's all nice and neat and pretty. We came up with a specification for all of our digital assets, and we've been working on that. That'll eventually go down to Sarah, that she'll put in her pipeline. That'll go into the repository. So there are lots of different facets to what I do, and I still answer lots of newspaper questions. Because as it turns out, people all over the country, Doug told me just last week that he went to Georgia for an oral history thing, and he mentioned my name, and he said, Copana from newspapers? Copana? Not anymore. She's Copana from oral history now. So, you know, but you end up with that kind of expertise, and you just answer questions all the time.
Yeah, you process one Henry Clay collection and then.
See? I mean,
With the questions.
de facto expert.
Well, I think Deirdre kind of set me up for the next question. My next question was going to be something completely different, but I guess it's worth asking. What is your favorite part of your job, your career, however you want to put it? What's the thing that you love the most? We've started on both ends, so we can start with Deirdre again, since she already gave her answer.
My favorite thing is harassing you,
Well,
giving you a hard time as the Clemens GA who gets to report to me. So, but I already answered that in brief. My
Yeah.
serious answer really is just I would get bored really easily, and if I had to do the same thing all day, every day, I would be crazier than I already am. So, like I said, that being able to sit around and come up with an idea and be able to do something about it is a lot of fun. And we work with a lot of creative people with great backgrounds. So, you know, this is just a small representation of the people who work in special collections. So, flexibility for sure. And we do have great stuff. I may not get to play with it myself anymore, but it's really easy to go out and be excited and be genuine about what we have, because it is pretty awesome.
I touched on it earlier in my answer, and I think it's just being able to look at history every day and not have any ulterior motive other than making it available for people to use. And I love learning new things, and I learn new things every day because, you know, last week I processed a collection. The guy was a railroad detective. How cool is that? And then he was in the Prohibition Bureau. And he has photos from the William Goebel assassination of the way that one of these suspected assassins ran. I mean, I get to look at really cool stuff every day, and I think that's what I love the most about it.
And then she tells me about it. So I live vicariously through that.
The best thing I think I've ever found is a letter from 1854 where the guy was a medical student, went and robbed a grave, and then threw it in a swamp. And then when they found the grave, they found the corpse, he then was like, well, I left to prevent any difficulties.
Seems like a waste, really. If you're gonna bother to rob someone's grave, you should at least do something with the
Well,
body.
he robbed the grave to dissect it, but then,
Yeah.
in his words, it wasn't suitable.
It wasn't dead enough?
archives.
Oh, so what do I like the most? I kind of like all of it. I think what I like the best is being able to collect and make available Kentucky history that's sort of been locked away and hidden before. A lot of people from around the state who have a lot of interest in what we have aren't able to get here, or they don't have the time to get here or whatever. And so when you see the look on their faces and you hear the appreciation in their voices when something rare gets handed to them, either in person or online, it's an extremely fulfilling moment in your career and in your life, and it makes all the hassle that you have to go through worth it. You know, I mean, because by hassle I mean there's just a lot of technology's not all it's cracked up to be. I mean, sometimes things just break, you know, and so you spend as much time trying to fix something so it works as you do, you know, actually making something available. So, you know, it gets on your nerve. I sound bad about it, but actually I've come to terms with it. You know, you do. You get all right with it. But yeah, so, you know, it's just the thank yous and the amount of joy that people get out of the stuff that you give, and that makes it all worth it.
Yeah, well, I definitely would echo everything that everyone's already said. They're doing a very good job at covering it. I love learning, and I love learning about history, so that's a nice aspect of my job. But this profession also is very rapidly changing, and I think librarianship in general too. So that's the other really great thing is, especially in special collections and archives, there's constantly new things popping up, and I'm fortunate enough to work with the digital technology side of it, so I'm having to learn these things, and we're constantly having to reevaluate our policies and our procedures and our workflows, and I really enjoy that because it keeps me on my toes. The fact that, you know, you think that you know something, and I like every day I realize that there's so much out there that I don't know yet and that I want to know, and it keeps me really fresh in the profession. I think that's really nice. So, and then also the other thing is, I think it's really exciting to do, you know, we all work in Kings, so we kind of all feel like we're hidden away, like in these caves, like doing this work in the dark or whatever, but it's really nice doing something that you know, even if you're not getting the thank you notes from patrons, like Opana was saying, that in like 20, 30, 50, 100 years, someone's going to be really, really thrilled that you preserve this material. And so I feel like I'm doing something to better society in these small little steps every day, which is really, really rewarding.
That's great.
Yeah, and so to follow up on that, what I think I love best about being an archivist is that all of the things we work with, and this is really echoing a lot of what everybody has said, is sort of the voice of the person or the organization that created that item, sort of coming at you from, you know, speaking to you sort of from beyond the grave, if you like, or that's the whole point of primary source material. It's it's a first person account of whatever was happening at that time. And what I love most is that when we in this time, or people 100 years from now, interact with that resource, we get to have an interaction with the mind and the emotion and the spirit behind that viewpoint. And that changes, or has the potential to change us also, or change the people in the future. And what I really love is that change, the possibility for that change to happen. That you learn something different about yourself, you learn something new about, or have a different perspective on where you live, where other people have lived, on your parents, things like that. And I see that not just in the people that use the material, but also because so much of our policies, procedures, standards, they all stem from, in fact, this first-personness of this material. So everything we do kind of stems from that. And so that means that when you are actually also working with it, either as a professional or as a student, you also are changed in the course of working through it, because you learn more about the stuff, you learn more about yourself. And I like to be involved in that learning process, whether it's on the side of working with the material to get it ready for other people to use, or also helping with the research process or the education and outreach process. So whenever I go to a secondhand store, if there's a book or paper or photographs, that's where, like, I'm looking at it because I'm so attracted to that material. And it's that attraction and sort of everything that it represents that I think is the best part about doing this work.
Great. Well, I guess before I open it up for group questioning, we'll have one more kind of big open question, and that's just recommendations. Since this is kind of intended for students to hear, what kind of recommendations do you have for A, someone trying to enter the archives profession, and B, somebody just trying to enter the library kind of information profession as a whole? I know that's kind of a lot to tackle, but there's a couple of things you'd like to recommend for students. Who wants to go first?
I would get as much experience as possible. I think that the job market is stuffed full of applications, and so any sort of hands-on experience that you can get will help elevate you to the top of the pile. And it gives you practical experience, and practical experience is, in my opinion, far and away better than just learning something out of a book. You can put it into practice right out of the gate, and that's important.
I would echo that very strongly. You need to get as much experience as you can, and also do things that aren't necessarily in your wheelhouse, things that scare you. I know everyone in their profession tends to maybe be an introvert or be quiet or, not super into public speaking, but don't limit yourself to what you think is the stereotype of a librarian. And also, have as many people as possible look at your resume and get notes on it. Help, because it is very helpful to have professionals and your professors look at your materials before you submit it.
I think one other thing too that you can do is whatever area of librarianship you may be interested in, there's going to be a professional organization that will have a newsletter, and the newsletters are always looking for people to contribute short pieces, things from the field, student perspectives, and that's a great way to add something else to your resume to help you stand out, to be involved and active in that way. In addition to that stuff, which would have been my top answer, get experience.
Yeah, that's my top answer too. But I would also say that when you come to sort of the cover letter and the interview process are sort of a piece, they're kind of the same thing in the sense that in both, you're going to be expected to be both able to summarize as well as give examples from your existing experience and schooling. And that doesn't even have to be the experiences you're getting while you're in library school, but also perhaps jobs that you had before and things like that. So developing the expertise to be able to answer a question like, so, tell us about a time when you worked with a large and complex collection, and how did you plan for it? How did you carry through the process, and what was the outcome? That's a very sort of traditional question or type of question. And so to be able to say, this is what I did, and then these are the steps I did to get through it. And then I also am always looking for people who can put things into context. And that's kind of like having a sense of sort of the broader purpose or the broader mission. So that if you answer that question by saying, we worked on this project because, and then this is what I did, that shows me that people are in the profession, they're professional, and thinking about sort of the broader scope of everything, as well as being able to apply their experience directly at the question that I have asked. And the same is true in the cover letter, sort of writing the cover letter to the job.
Yeah, experience, definitely. Also, while you're here in this program or wherever you guys are, if you're working somewhere and you're starting to think about applying for jobs, really get help from the folks that you work with. We're all here because we care about the program and we want to help you guys succeed. And so if you need someone who has professional experience to look over your cover letter or your resume or just some sort of mentor relationship, seek those people out, because we don't know that you want it. You guys have to come to us. So seek those opportunities out. And then also, I found that being, and I know not everybody has this ability, but being able and willing to relocate geographically is very helpful. So I skipped around on my project archivist positions. I was in Chicago, and then I was in Charleston, South Carolina before I came here, and it was terrifying, but it was also amazing and great, and I love the chances at going out and living in these different communities and learning about them and their history. So I highly recommend that if you have the ability to move, to seek out of Kentucky opportunities, even though Kentucky is wonderful, and I'm glad I ended up here.
Well, thank you guys. Those are great responses. I guess we'll just open it up for questioning.
I have a question. This is sort of jumping off what Megan was saying about archivist and librarian stereotypes. What are some common myths about archives and archivists, and what would you say to people to sort of dispel that?
Do we need to repeat the question for the people online?
Daniel, did they hear it? Do you think?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was typing a response to somebody. What was the question?
Oh, I'll just say it. The question was, what are the myths of archives and archivists, and what can the real people say to dispel these terrible rumors?
Well, I mean, I think that if you've gone into the profession thinking that you're going to work in a isolated environment and never have to interact with other people, it's the wrong profession. You know, the stereotype of the dusty archives in a basement just doesn't really exist anymore. And
Well,
There's
the
dust.
dust.
yeah, but there's not someone sitting down there by themselves, you know, with their cat, not talking to anyone. So you have to really be willing to talk to people. You know, your stakeholders are, it's dependent on what kind of archive or special collections that you work in. So, you know, for us here, we may have to interact with students on campus, faculty members on campus, the general public, people's grandmothers who are coming in for research questions, and then
Administrators.
other administrators on campus, and then donors, not only donors for collections, but people with money who want to donate. So you have to be able to interact with a variety of people and speak at whatever level is appropriate in that situation.
We just had a lovely meeting this morning about mainstreaming special collections, and I think that it seems obvious that special collections across the country are looking for ways to integrate into their college, university communities, instead of that idea of, you know, going into their reading room and requesting papers to look at. I mean, that still exists, but there are also so many more ways that I know that we make an impact on campus through our digital initiatives and exhibits, education, teach a lot of classes. A lot of students come in that building now. So I think that myth is sort of, we're trying to kill it.
So it kind of goes along with the myth of what archival research looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it is still the case that, you know, people would come to use a repository, have a very broad research question that they're spending 2, 3, 10 years exploring because they may have already even gotten their PhD and are writing their first book or something like that. That a lot of archival theory and practice for a long time has been sort of aimed at that kind of researcher, and that is also changing pretty substantially. So that all of the delivery methods that you were mentioning, Megan, the ways that we conduct outreach, who we sort of welcome into the archives and to special collections, generally all of that is changing rapidly, and the profession is changing along with it.
Great.
I would like to say one more thing, is that archives is kind of like the great, you know, in government and in businesses it's seen as accountability. And to me it's a great equalizer, is that you can come in and look at these records of the university. I mean,
Anyone can.
anyone can.
Yeah.
They're free for everyone.
Right.
So.
Does anyone have any questions? Or maybe they have some online? We can read those out loud.
I'm not coming up yet.
All right. Well, online folks, think of something. No pressure.
Now, we did have a person ask if it would be okay with you guys if she contacted one of you apart from this presentation if she had more questions. Okay, cool.
Everyone's emails are through Special's website, is that right? They have faculty profiles. I know I've had to use them to find emails before.
And we did just have a question come up. If you were still in library school, what classes would you take that maybe you didn't take?
My biggest regret is not taking databases.
Yes.
My
Oh my gosh,
biggest
I echo that.
regret.
I also would encourage you to look outside the library science field and maybe hop in and get a computer science class in there, like databases, because that's another big thing that will set you apart is if you have any sort of general coding or can do anything technology-wise, because that, we're always looking for people who can do that sort of thing.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about some initiatives going on at UK Special Collections right now that you're excited about. I know Reel to Reel is happening still.
So I don't want to
I
dominate.
think you're the one who knows about Reel to Reel, if you want to explain that.
Well, there's a lot of things happening in special collections
Talk about
right
Learning Lab
now.
first, and then
Well, we started a formal internship program called the Special Collections Learning Lab, which is a competitive undergraduate internship program where what we're trying to do is instead of, like advertising for a student to come and process a collection, we're putting out selected collections based on research topics to match an undergraduate who has an interest in that particular area. Connected with that, each internship, there's a research component to the program. The Stacy Williams, who is in charge of the Learning Lab, has another project that she's been working on this year called Reel to Reel Special Collections. It's movies that are connected in some way to primary sources that we have or subject areas that we have in special collections, and so she does a talk before the movie and then screens it in the Wharton Theater on campus, which is a great way, I think, to connect primary sources with films. And there's just a great article out today about all the archival work that went into 12 Years a Slave, for instance. What else do we have going on? There's the immigrants. Immigrants in Appalachia was another special initiative, and there are 2 students working on that?
2 students, one indexed a large amount of, what's that oral history project?
Immigrants in Appalachia and out-migration,
Migration.
Appalachia, and war on poverty.
Yeah, and so one student did oral history indexing, one student processed a few Appalachian-related collections, and then they've been working very closely with Raynette Jones, who's been spearheading the project, to create this sort of online exhibit about immigration and outmigration in Appalachia, specifically regarding or dispelling the stereotype of the Appalachian, that Appalachia is really a much more diverse region than it appears. So, and there will also be a physical exhibit that is going up right now
As we sit here.
Go see it.
Yeah. And then there is the online thing going to be on the kiosk in special collection?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. Well,
I think so.
there's an online component too,
Right.
which looks amazing, with lots of oral histories integrated in, pictures, maps, a lot of data.
Digital Library Services is working on I actually don't do very much with this, but I think it's really interesting. They're working on a current newspaper project. And so you heard Kopana talk a little bit about when she first started here at UK Library, she was doing microfilming of newspapers. That we no longer do that. And as many of you probably already know, when newspapers are published, they're doing it on their computer, right? So the first copy, like the master copy, is a born digital item. And I don't understand all the like rules behind it, but from what I understand, all of the Kentucky newspapers, when the publishers send that master copy off to be published, that digital file gets sent to some company based out of Missouri that keeps them all for the public notices, because that's supposed to be free and open. This is all very foggy to me, but Digital Library Services has partnered with the Kentucky Press Association to get permission to get access to that server in Missouri, and we have essentially a bot set up that routinely harvests new issues of newspaper from that server, grabs them, pulls them, and then preps them to go online to the Kentucky Digital Library. So it's a way to preserve current newspapers like we were doing with the paper copies, years and years ago. And I just think that's really exciting because it doesn't take a whole lot of staff time. It's just something that's very automated. And then those papers being born digital, you can search them very easily. So.
Yeah,
Do you want to talk about that?
I can start off and then, so I have already forgotten when it was awarded. Anyway, we recently got a National Endowment for the Humanities grant for 2.5 years, I think? 3 years?
3 years.
3 years digitization grant to scan the majority of 10 collections relating to Appalachia, specifically focused on economic and industrial development in Appalachia, especially around natural resources, but also including railroads. So that's why it's called Coal, Camps, and Railroads. And Digital Library Services staff are doing the imaging, and archive staff did selecting of the collections, and also looking at things like, is stuff in copyright, and sort of thinking about what can go online and what can't go online, and also blueprints, flattening blueprints if those need to be flattened before they can be scanned. And so archive staff sort of preparing the things to get them ready for digitization. And that's just kind of percolating away, which is very exciting. And some things have been mounted already on Explore UK, and more will be posted.
300,000 pages or 30,000 pages total?
300,000.
Yeah, it's
283,
yeah.
something like that.
I think it is 300,000. And we generally, in the past couple of years, UK Libraries has gone the route of doing mass digitization rather than very selective digitization, which is, it's becoming more common, but I wouldn't say it's widespread through the library for archives profession. Not a lot of institutions are doing this, but when we select a collection to be scanned, we pretty much put all of it up. And if we're worried that a collection has something that shouldn't go online or that isn't copyright, we just tend not to focus on those collections unless they're extremely important, and then we do some selection. But it's kind of interesting.
Interesting to think about what can go online. Is that what you mean? Or the mass digitization
I just think it's
versus
interesting that
curated.
it's just, we're purely just blowing through a collection and scanning everything. So we're essentially trying to recreate this exact same situation that happens when a patron walks into a reading room and they get a folder, or they get a box put in front of them, and they have to pull that folder out, and they have to do the work of searching through that folder and seeing what's there. We're giving them that same environment where we're not, each thing that's scanned doesn't get specific metadata. It's just the same amount of metadata that's provided originally in the finding aid. And I think overall it's been well received. I think people are really excited about having that sort of open access to it, and it makes the workflow very fluid because our imaging technicians don't, all they have to worry about is making a good quality digital surrogate of that item. They're not worried about what's in there and whether or not it should go online.
Where can people access this kind of stuff from? Is this through
This stuff is on Explore UK.
Explore UK?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then also the Kentucky Digital Library.
Great. Are there any more questions? We're getting close to time. We could probably take one or two more. Anything from the online folks?
No more questions.
No more questions? Well, if that's everything, thank you guys so much for spending an hour talking to us. Let's give them a round of applause.
I'd just like to thank Seth and our UK Special Collections guest who will speak today, and also the Society of American Archivists Student Chapter. Just to let everyone know, this will be on our YouTube. Once it's up, we'll have links to special collections and some of the other things mentioned in the discussion today for you to explore. Thank you all for coming out here. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.